You, you, uh, you forgot to mention the tough questions, but you said we were going to have a chat. I didn't know it was going to be tough. So yeah, there you go. Thank you for coming. I hope this will be worth your evening. And we're going to have some time for you as well to ask questions. So please bring the tough ones. I think that's what matters.
And your mints there too, if you need.
Yes, he has mints for me. So he told me every time I answer a question, okay, I can have one of those. So that's what's happening now.
the 1 mint prize. So how many of you have read Solve for Happy? Okay, cool. And how many of you have seen like Mo's, any of his videos, those viral videos that got circulated? How many of you guys saw them? Yeah, like over half got to see the video.
Yeah, video is always a big part of, I mean, books don't reach 1 billion, right? I mean, if a book reaches 1 billion people, that beats Jesus. So that's, we're not aiming for that, right? But the idea really of the mission is to spread online through video. So thank you for having watched them, and hopefully you're spreading the message on that. Yeah.
I think something that I really appreciated that you said in the book that I've learned from you is that that this happiness pot of gold is not at the end of the rainbow of achievement, but rather it's along the journey, in the present moment, along the journey. It's almost it's a mindset along the journey.
Yeah, so one of the biggest myths of the modern world is that, and I say that with love and respect, we've productized everything. We've even productized happiness. It's like, it's really, really funny because that pot of gold that's called happiness was actually at the beginning of the journey. So you were born happy, right? Every child you've ever seen, every infant you've ever seen, if they get their basic needs for survival, they're happy, right? And then we run out of happiness. It's not the other way around, right? But yet, because everything to us now is sort of the material view of the world, we think that happiness is something that we should acquire, we should strive for, we should work hard to achieve. It's almost like we've earned it, like we've done our share of hard work and now we deserve to be happy. When you were a child, you didn't have to do anything to be happy, right? You didn't even need anything from outside you to be happy. Now, that myth is, in my view, the biggest enemy of happiness in the modern world. It's almost as if we come to a point where we don't think we deserve it anymore. As a matter of fact, a lot of us even believe that if we're happy, we're doing something wrong. Maybe we're not trying hard enough, right? You know, some Northern European culture, you know, is so against the idea that if you smile at someone in the street, they'll think that something's wrong with you, right? In a very interesting way, if you go to work and appear to be very happy, your boss will go like, are we paying him too much? You know, it's like, what's wrong with this, right? It's like we've started to tell ourselves, no, we should not be happy. And so we started to delay it. We started to say, when I have achieved the other more important priorities, then I have earned the right to be happy. Yeah. What priority is more important? It's like when you really think about it, aren't you trying to achieve all of this so that you become happy? So why the middleman? Why do you have to take a step on the way? Why don't you just solve directly for happy?
There's 2 things that I think are really important to unpack there. First is the child. I think that's really important to unpack there. And then the other thing is the kind of the balance that we can strike between wanting to achieve our goals and setting forth, and I have a goal, I've written it down, I'm going to achieve it, but not being super tied to the outcome, not relying our happiness on that outcome, but rather on the journey maybe of getting to that goal. So let's start with that latter one, the one that I just said. And then
so this actually is, so one of the things that I really try to achieve with Solve for Happy and with my entire 1 Billion Happy mission is a thought that we are here for a reason, right? We're traveling the physical world in this physical form to make a difference, right? each of us in his own or her own very different way. So, some of us might make a difference by developing a piece of code, others might make a difference by raising a wonderful child or sharing a piece of knowledge or even just smiling in someone's face and changing the world that way, right? Yet, that conviction that to have an impact on life, you have to pay unhappiness as the tax to get there is wrong, right? So this work is an attempt not to say, let's find happiness the eat, pray, love way. Like, you don't have to go to an ashram and leave life to achieve that happiness, but rather, find happiness on the path to impact, right? And surprisingly, the best path to impact is actually to be happy. There is so much research that will tell you that happy people are a lot more productive than unhappy people.
12%.
12% specifically is the statistic. But it's also, it's also not, that's measuring their own productivity. It's not measuring the productivity, the impact that they have on others around them, right? If you're a happy customer service employee, your customers are happy. Your business is better. If you're happy, you make your colleagues happy. They add a little bit of their 12%. Everything starts to roll from there. Now, I worked at Google for years, and people would think that, we have game rooms and we offer coffees and sushi because we're nice. No, it's Google was very wise to create an environment where people are happy. Happy people are more productive. They commit more to what they work on. They report less absent leaves. They don't change jobs as often. They don't complain about other benefits and perks because they enjoy what they're doing, right? It's the wise thing to do. Happiness is not a luxury, and it's not a luxury in our relationship, and it's not a luxury when we raise our children. And that's the biggest issue we have, is that we were talking before we came here about the world that we live in today that is a result of the Great Depression and World War II. Everything that you live in today, that enormous greed, that enormous competitiveness, the individual focus, is just a big trauma that our grandparents went through and then decided, you know what, I don't want you to ever suffer like I did, and the insurance policy I'm going to give you is called success, right? Let's go out there and make sure that you're successful, so that you never really suffer, right? And as we try to chase that success, we ignore everything that matters. And we ignore the path. We ignore this moment, which is a wonderful moment, regardless of if you make $100 at the end of the month or $1 billion at the end of your life. By the way, even when you do get there, you're going to go like, just $1 billion? Maybe I should just kill myself for another 5 years and make another $1 billion. And I've seen that so often. It's just delusional. It's just constant striving for something you don't need, to buy things that you don't want, to impress people that you don't like. Yeah.
I really want to talk about the conspicuous consumption. I think we'll talk about that in culture, as you mentioned, what's been going on for the last 70 or so years. Let's maybe talk about the child on the way there. So something that I loved as a way of understanding the child is that the child's aperture for signal, for love, and for learning is massive when the child's born, and then culture does things that slowly closes this aperture to the signal and this love. Tell us more about the child and about
so look, please do that experiment. I mean, I actually am writing a simplified version of Solve for Happy now, and one of the exercises is I'm saying, go and babysit, right? Watch children. That's a wonderful exercise, right? If you go and watch children, you would see them there lying on their back, right? They, as long as as I said, they have their basic needs for survival, which by the way includes love, right? So they're fed, they're safe, they're warm, and so on, and they're loved. And watch what they do. They lie there on their back and they giggle. They're full of joy. They just look at the ceiling. It's like, seriously, what's so interesting up there? But the child is just constantly staring at nothing, and in total joy.
When they're not pooping and screaming and yelling.
That's really interesting. No, but that's actually quite interesting, because when a diaper gets wet,
oh God.
right, the child gets unhappy, right? You change the diaper, you remove the reason for unhappiness, the child goes back to its default setting, right? It's literally like your mobile phone, right? You take it out of the box, and it works perfectly well for the first day, right? So the battery lasts a full day, only that first day, right? And then what happens is you start to install weird apps on it. And that's really, truly what happens to us as children. They start
especially San Francisco, we install lots of weird apps.
I mean, I love you guys, but it's like really, the more Western we become, the more influenced we are by the illusions of the modern world. And those illusions include things like the shape of your body matters, the way people think about you matters, you know, that success is measured in material possessions, that this is the only way to measure success. And by the way, it doesn't matter how much you have. What matters is that you have more than your neighbor, right? You don't have to score an A. You have to score an A better than your sister, right? And you know, it's like, why? Like, seriously, I mean, my wonderful son Ali came to me at a point in time, and I said, Ali, you should score an A in mathematics. You're good in mathematics. And he said, Papa, why? Why do you want me to score an A? I said, because you're good at it. And he went like, yeah, but why is an A important? If I'm good at it, why do you want an A, right? And I struggled a little bit, and he said, okay, let me help you here. Do you want me to learn math and be amazing at it and score a B? Or do you want me to not learn math and score an A? Which of those is better for you?
Good question.
Great question. And I was like, yeah, why do I care so much about a mold that they put us in, while the reality is all I want is that my son learns mathematics, right? And by the way, I didn't want him to learn geography, even though every parent will say, hey, you know, you need to score an A in everything. Too much. And take that and understand how we treat our children, right? They're born happy, they stay happy until we mess up, right? We send them to school and we say, hey, you remember that playful, joyful thing? No more, right? 6 hours a day, we want you to sit in this place, don't open your mouth. Whatever junk the teacher says, nod and say yes, right? If you believe that what the teacher is telling you is not right, don't object, because that's not a good way to score, right? To get an A. And what do? Some of us resist and we're rebellious and we take a few weeks of saying, no, I still want to play, right? And then we all submit and we all go like, yeah, who wants to play? It's like, it's causing me too much trouble. Who wants to be, playful? Who wants to be fun? Let's just get serious. Serious? You're 6. Like, where did that come from, right? And we take that and we follow through the rest of our lives. One of my most eye-opening experiences when I joined Google, was that 10 things we knew to be true. One of them was you can be serious without a suit, right? Mm-hmm. And there is a very interesting difference between serious or grumpy, if you want, and committed. They're not one and the same. Somehow people said, hey, you need to be serious. Yeah. Does serious equal grumpy, or does serious equal committed, right? I'm committed. I can show up at work and put my heart in it, but smile and hug my team, and we have a good time and we have fun and we love it. Isn't that better than just going out there and going, do your work? Right? Who wants that? We're all little children inside.
Yes. And Pablo Picasso talked about the importance of retaining a childhood throughout the rest of your life.
Believe it or not. So as I said, I'm working on several other works now. I have 8 pages in that new piece of work that reminds you how to become a child. It's funny.
That's good.
Yeah, it's funny that we forgot.
Can you give us a little spoiler, a little one?
Bubble gum, ice cream. It's like, I'm sorry, I love California, but like seriously, those brownies are horrible. Like, the ones with what? Chia and like sand and, who wants that, right? Have fun, enjoy life, right? And I'm, by the way, I'm not saying go all the way to the other extreme.
Only brownies and ice cream, no.
No, but you know, when was the last time you ran around with your children in a park or with your friends in a park? When did you actually go to the gym to enjoy it? Right? We go to the gym to deliver another target. It's really weird.
We're running an algorithm rather than enjoying the process.
We forgot about joy. We are so driven, we are so self-critical, we are so unhappy with where we are, even though I will tell you, if you're in this room, you're one of the luckiest 0.1% of the people on the face of this planet, right? And hey, you may have to spend the next 40 years of your life to become one of the luckiest 0.01% of the people on this planet. But don't forget that you're luckier than 99.9% of everyone who lives, right? So why are we striving so hard? Why don't we just make a difference to the world without really being grumpy about it? Why is it that I'm talking too much. Why is it that we are so unable to enjoy the blessings that we've been given when it is abundant? To the point that it is almost impossible to count. I would urge you to do that exercise.
Yeah.
I would urge you to count the number of blessings that you have that a person in Syria today does not have.
Yeah.
It will blow you away. I mean, I sometimes have people complaining about their life and I would say, okay, I want you to do me a favor. I want you to wait until January and then walk the streets of San Francisco or New York, find a homeless person and complain about what you just told me about. Okay?
Yes.
If you find it in your heart
to do that,
to repeat one of those, you know, modern world problems to them, then it's a real problem.
I frequently spend time thinking about what it's like to live in the shoes of people that are much less fortunate than I am. And I think that helps a lot with having gratitude for the circumstances that I do live in. And this is all different types of experiments, everything from what would it be like to not have electricity? What would it be like to not have clean water or a shelter over your head or constant warfare going around or around you? And that when we really immerse ourselves in those life experiences, I think it changes us for the better, makes us more grateful for what we do have. You touched on the importance of just having an ice cream and really enjoying it and being in the park and just really enjoying it rather than treating it like an algorithm of needing to take your kids to the park and just be frowned, but rather go and run and play and take a Frisbee and dance. And when you're walking on the streets, do your best to smile. And you'll change the way that other people's days are going by doing something as simple as just smiling on the street. Mo, you mentioned culture over the last 70 years, and I really want to unpack this in a little more detail and how it applies to children especially. Now, the conspicuous consumption era it's everywhere now. Yeah. You're in your book, this story that Mo teaches you about is that very financially successful and you answered a question.
Well, I was just going to ask, can I get them?
So financially successful, and then the process of wanting to, you're in Dubai. I don't know how many of you have been to Dubai, but when you're in Dubai, you see extraordinary wealth in Dubai. And you go, with a couple clicks, I'm gonna buy a Rolls Royce. And the moment the Rolls Royce landed, you weren't any happier. And this sort of consumptive process of, I don't wear jewelry, and I don't want to wear jewelry. I don't like the vibe. Other people like the vibe, and they can choose that to be their vibe. But there's a certain reason for that. And I think that there is some sort of a process of consumption that we get used to. Once you get a 1-bedroom apartment, you want a 2-bedroom apartment, then you want 3, then you want a house, then you want 2 cars, not just 1 car. So what do we do? Because so much of the culture around us is pushing these milestones in our face. What do we do in return?
You find out what you really want. How many of us actually spend time to introspect and say, okay, that didn't work? The idea of consuming so much is because we have been taught that material possessions are going to make us happy. So you buy a car, and for somewhere around 20 to 70 seconds, you go like, I made it, right? And then you sit behind the wheel, and regardless of what car it is, what do you look at? You look at the road, right? It doesn't really matter at all which car you are in, unless it serves your ego, right? Which basically is the reason why people buy expensive cars. It's like to tell the rest of the world that you made it. Now, I will tell you, hands down, if you really have made it, you will realize that this urge goes away. It's like, unless you haven't made it, and so you're trying to lie to the world, and I might as well tell you, save your money until you make it, right? But that's not the point. The point is, we're consuming because of a vicious circle. We buy something, it gives us that jolt of happiness for 20 seconds, and then it goes away. And we start to say, instead of saying that whatever it is that we bought has no inherent value of happiness in it, we say, it's because we didn't buy the right one, right? If I buy a better car, I'll probably find happiness there, right? So you buy a better car, and then you just get that jolt for 60 seconds, and then you go like, it went away because it's not red. If I bought it in red, I would be happier, right? And you keep chasing and chasing, surprisingly stupid enough to never stop and say, is happiness not found in cars? Like, seriously, when I was a child, lying on my back, I didn't have a car, and I was happy, right? So is happiness not found there? And when you make that just little pause to think, suddenly you realize what it is that's not serving you in life. The problem becomes bigger. We're destroying our planet. I don't know if you know the statistics. There are 1 billion people around the world that are obese, and 1 billion people around the world that are starving to death. Our world is not lacking resources. We're just so abusive and so irresponsible that we, there are all of those talks about we're not going to leave anything for our children. No, it is a lot more urgent than that. In a few, in some years from now, you're not going to have enough for you. This is a big trick of the exponential function. You know how the question of if a jar has 10% in it and it's doubling every year or every 5 years, every doubling fills more as much as is full already. How much time? How many more doublings if you're at 50%? It's not 5 or 10 or 50 more doublings. It's just one more, and we're so close in so many ways. The least noticed of which is depression. I mean, you've seen the recent events, and it's so sad. It kills me. 1 of every 4 people you will interact with in San Francisco is clinically depressed. They're not talking about it, right? But they're clinically, and these are the people that actually found it in their heart and found the resources to go and get diagnosed to the point that they're actually clinically diagnosed depressed. There are so many that are unhappy, and we're all sucking it in and saying, well, I'm fine, right? You know the typical answer is like, how are you today? And you go like, I'm just fine, right? I actually pause. When someone asks me, how are you today? I say, let me think about it. I actually feel quite calm, a bit, worried about the conversation, and a little bit sleep deprived. That kind of awareness is a call for me to actually understand how I feel, right? The problem is the following. 1 in every 4 is clinically depressed. Teen suicide is at an all-time high. Suicide in general is at an all-time high. And we're not even addressing the problem, right? Our planet's resources are depleted. They're more and more depleted, and we're not even addressing the problem.
You wrote in your book our tendency to be driven towards negativity, to have negative thoughts be the ones, they're 60
to 70%.
And then 62% of all words related to emotion are negative.
Are negative.
And then the way that you just described culture and civilization, there's a plateau you write about as well that I think is important to highlight. There's so many people depressed, suicide. There's a plateau of income that you earn per year, about 70,000 or so is this plateau, because then you can buy all the necessities you need: shelter, food, water, education, healthcare. And then after that, it's a $70,000. Plateau is happiness. The thought about, for example, like Anthony Bourdain, something that I read that I really wanted to share that I thought was really important was it's not about what you live, but it's about how you live it. And that really resonates, because if we just choose that all these experiences that we live, how we live these experiences is with a love of the present moment and a love of just life, then it changes a lot of the way that we live and a lot of the way that other people live. Mo, maybe this is something that might pique your interest, because we talk about the planet, we talk about resource depleting. There seems to be a drive with the millennial generation and with the Generation Z, seems to be driven to the shared economy. We're now doing things more for the Instagram. You can rent a dress for a day, or you can go and have an experience at like the ice cream factory or whatever, from ice cream museum for a day. You can rent a car, a nice car, for one day, and you get the experience, and you take an Instagram photo, and that's it. And it's a shared economy in that sense. So we seem to be transitioning in some ways in the right direction.
Not at all.
Okay. I know the do it for the Instagram thing is not necessarily...
Not at all. I was discussing this with a friend yesterday. The proper way to solve a problem, or to actually set an intention, or whatever it is, starts with the why, then the what, then the how. Shared economy is offering a different how for the wrong why, for the wrong what.
What is the why then?
So here's the question. Why do we dress? Why do we buy clothes?
Probably shame. Shame of being naked.
There is a bit of decency for the human...
I don't have as much of that shame as other people do.
No, but there is... So your city is cold for this time of the year, just so that you know, right?
Okay, warmth. Warmth was there, yeah.
So this is one of them, right? The other is you really want to cover yourself somehow, right?
Oh my gosh, we would be comparing size of genitals then? Oh my god.
No, we don't want to do that. And bad image. Now, the question is that why you buy clothes? You want to buy a car to move from A to Z, right? From A to B. Is that why you choose a specific car? You want to buy a phone to browse the internet and answer calls. Is that why you do it? Now, consumption, most of our consumption is ego-driven. It's not need-driven at all, right? We consume not because we need, we consume because we want to show the others a side of ourselves that is true or not. Now, if you fix the why, you wouldn't need a different how.
So why would need to be for need rather than for ego?
So one of the exercises I discuss, which gets a lot of positive feedback in Solve for Happy, is an exercise I call undress. So understand, there is a utility to ego. There is a utility to ego. If you actually, ego here is not defined as arrogance. Ego is defined as as an identity that you assume for yourself and you want the world to understand as you, right? So I am an engineer has a utility. When I tell you that, you understand that this book is not going to tell you to say right? If I was a spiritual leader, you would understand that this might be about the spiritual practice. If I tell you I'm an engineer, you understand there are going to be equations and a little bit of science in this, right? Or a lot of science in this. So there is a utility to having that identity. There is, however, ego in it. It's like if I want to convince you that I'm an engineer and that engineers are better than others and then I'm now trying to fulfill that endless attempt that started when I was 6, or actually when I was 3, when I started to jump up and down and say, Mommy, look at me, I'm doing this, right? I'm now telling Mommy and everyone else, hey, look at me, I'm great, I'm amazing. It's like, why? Why do we try to prove that much? Now,
what
if you fix the why,
if
you fix the why, you suddenly own your ego, but your ego doesn't own you anymore, right? And that is true success, is to realize that ego is a total illusion and that it will never actually be satisfied and that it will constantly be a moving target and that you will never, ever feel settled and peaceful as long as you're chasing ego. I work with and I teach Solve for Happy to billionaires, right? And they're still bragging to each other. It's like, when does it stop, right? So they go to Vegas and they spend $500,000 each because they just want to show each other that, hey, I can lose $500 million, can you, right? They buy more and more cars, not because they need them, but because they want to say, look at me, I bought the expensive one, and so on and so forth. Ego is never satisfied. As long as you're following it, you're going to follow it for the rest of your life. Now, the question is, can you fix the why? Can I come to all of you and say, by the way, this is one of the very rare days where I wore a shirt because honestly, it's cold for me, I swear, right? I normally wear a $19 t-shirt, which by the way, interestingly, is another form of ego.
That's one of the best exercises, is to eat non-expensive food, to wear non-expensive things. The frugal tendency is actually a really good way to...
Yeah, I just came out of a full month of fasting in Ramadan, right? Which is a religious practice, but I believe it's one of my favorite practices of the year. I practice so many religious practices from all different spiritual beliefs. One of them is one of my favorites, which is Ramadan. And Ramadan, we fast from sunrise to sunset. So this year it was 19 hours of fasting, no water, no food, for 30 full days. It reminds you. So the 31st day when you wake up and have a coffee, you go like, oh man, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Like seriously, it's like, it's just a sip of water at noon is like, wow. Yeah. And the whole thing is that throughout the month, you start to go like, so is this what the 786 million people around the world who don't have access to clean waters, is this how they feel? Man, I'm so lucky, right? If you start to remember what hungry people actually feel, you start to really realize that all you really need is a bowl of rice and maybe, if you're lucky, a tomato. And that actually is quite okay, right? And we forget. You start to forget that all you really need is a $19 t-shirt. And by the way, maybe 4 of them. If you're really, really overdoing it, you might end up with 20. Does that mean you need to be a billionaire? Like, how many $20 t-shirts can you buy? How many jeans can you buy? How many beds can you sleep on? And this isn't, it's not just about, I'm not criticizing the material side of our life. I'm just saying this is one example of an illusion that we chase so hard, we spend our entire life trying to achieve. It's never satisfied.
The ego also helps us achieve our goals as well. So there's also something nice about our conscientious ability to set a goal and to be happy along the journey to get to that goal. No.
Ego prevents you from achieving your goals. First of all, define what your goals are. If your goals are to be happy, then ego is fucking it up completely, right? Because you'll never be happy chasing an ego because people are busy chasing their own egos. So they're not...
What do you use to set a goal then?
Is 1 billion happy a bad goal?
It's a great goal, but but what do you use if not the ego? What do you use to set that goal?
So this is the most interesting discovery for myself and for my children and for everyone I worked with for the last 11 years. We have a tendency to be motivated by the negative. This is the way our parents, raised us. And
A stick. I just imagine a stick.
yeah, school. You score an A in school, or pass the test for no reason other than you're trying to avoid problems here, right? You stand in the street and protest against whatever it is that you're against. Why? Because of hate or anger or disgust or whatever that is.
Robin Hanson wrote a great book about this as well. Yeah, we vote to show our community that
Yeah.
we're with you. We're
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, have you ever tried to be motivated by the positive? Oh my God, it's
The
totally
carrot.
different. The positive could be the carrot, but that's also a little bit of very self-centered and focused, right?
Well, like providing value to society.
So I could stand in a public square and protest because of anger for what's happening in Syria and the people that are dying, or I could stand in the same place and protest for compassion for the people who are suffering so much, right? Which of them would produce a better result, do you think? If I'm angry, I will waste so much time and effort and tension on my anger. And once I release that anger, it's over. If it's compassion, I'm actually driven with a peaceful approach to actually fixing the problem. I have nothing to release. I just want the people to be better. Remember Gandhi, right? Was Gandhi motivated by hate or motivated by compassion, by peacefulness, by the right things, huh?
Yeah.
If I want to motivate myself, do I have to motivate myself by telling myself that I'm a horrible person? Do I have to feel that I'm bad to become better? Or can I actually feel wonderful about what I've tried to achieve so far and still want to be better? Can I love me and still want to be better?
Yes.
Are they contradictory?
Yes. No.
So if we start to learn this one little trick of, I want to be motivated by the positive, right? And there is so much positive we can have in the world, right? My positive is I'm trying to make, by the way, 1 billion happy is just a directional target.
And you hit 10 million and then you upgrade it to 1 billion.
Yeah, but you know what my target is right now? To make you guys happy. Mm-hmm. If that happens, great day. When tomorrow happens, we'll see how many people will show up, right? But that's a wonderful measure of success. It's a wonderful measure of success. Believe it or not, and I know a lot of people misunderstand the current Google, but the Google I joined, Larry and Sergey would always tell us, it's not about the money. If you manage to solve a big problem that affects the lives of 1 billion people or more, you're bound to make money.
Yeah.
Larry used to call it the toothbrush test. If you manage to invent the next toothbrush and people use it twice a day, they're probably going to pay you something, right? But the focus was, can I actually solve that problem? Capitalism took that away. So the first thing we start with is the business plan. How much money is there in it? How much can we reduce our cost? How much can we increase our revenue? We forgot. And the difference between you solving the problem and making a very good living, like a B Corp approach, for example, and just squeezing every cent out of it, is that you're going to get $999 million more when all you need is a $20 t-shirt. What a waste of life. What a waste of life. By the way, I'm in no way saying don't be filthy rich, don't be hyper influential, don't be extremely powerful. I'm absolutely saying that the biggest problem we have with our world today is that the people who chase richness, wealth, fame, and power are not the best of us. If the best of us become rich, become famous, become powerful, become influential, we would change the world. So I actually tell people it's your absolute duty, if you're a good person, to become as effective, as impactful as you can in this world.
Yes.
But when you're doing it, do it out of positivity. Don't do it with your unhappiness, your stress as the tax to pay on the path.
Don't do it from a egotistical, hedonistic, greedy perspective, do it from bringing utility to civilization, making it a better place for forever. This is something that we ask a lot on the show, and I think it'll be good to ask you this one. It seems to be that exponential technology is exacerbating wealth inequality quite a bit, as in the rich are getting very, very, very rich and are now able to use genetic engineering and neuroprosthetics and space colonization and cryptocurrency and all these different sorts of means in order to exacerbate their wealth and improve their wealth, versus the poor very, very, very slowly increasing their wealth across the world. What do you think about a potential class-based speciation? Do you have any concerns about wealth inequality? What are they?
It's happening. So technology affects our lives in so many ways. We tend to ignore the positives first. So let me talk about the positives. We have never had a longer life expectancy in the modern history of humanity. We've never had better transportation, better quality, better healthcare, better quality of living in general.
Yep.
Lots of things are so much better, and,
yes.
and they're going to continue to get better.
Yes.
But we've also never had so much bullying, huh? So we
megalomaniacs.
It's really crazy. Huh? So when I was growing up, there were 2 bullies in school that we had to worry about, right? Maybe I was one of them. I'm never going to say that, but anyway. Today, every teenager has to worry about 1 billion bullies. I mean, there are all over the internet.
Yes.
Tens of thousands, right? So there is an adverse impact to that. Now, technology, interestingly, is just a tool. So you can walk, I think, at 8 kilometers an hour. If you get in a car, you can get up to 280 kilometers an hour. Technology is just magnifying our abilities. So it's also magnifying our problems, but it's just a tool. I can use this glass to drink water, or I can hit you on the head with it. Is it the problem of the glass? It isn't. The glass is just a tool, right? We've abused technology. We've also submitted to a world where we allow technology players to do whatever they want, and we just submit and go like, yes, master, we're going to use it as you're offering it to us. And I love Apple, right? But as long as we keep buying fancier and fancier phones, they're going to make fancier and fancier phones, right? Until we take a stand and we say, hey, by the way, guys, next phone should reduce the amount of time I bend my head and look at it. Mm-hmm. You need to make me more productive. You need to make me happier. Otherwise, I'm not buying it. They're going to make that happen. If we go to Hollywood and say, no more violent movies, they're going to make comedies, right? We don't exercise our rights to choose, okay? Put all of that together and then ask yourself where our world is going. Our world has not advanced. That's the problem. So we have more toys for the wrong why, but believe it or not, if you truly look at our world today, we as humans, we're not advancing at all. We're actually declining. We're not progressing in our own humanity, right?
So the technology is progressing, but humanity inside
is declining.
Is declining.
So the reason why we have dating sites is because we're unable to connect anymore. We're unable to walk out there and see a wonderful person and walk to them and say, hi, right? And so the calculator, the scientific calculator, is helping you solve more math problems because you're unable to calculate yourself anymore, right? The dating site is hopefully complementing the weakness that we're developing in connecting. The social media is trying to give us more virtual friends because the value of friendship of every one of them is less than the true value of us, right? Meeting each other, just hugging each other, just looking others in the eyes. And the problem is becoming massive. And I don't know how many of you have seen my 1 billion happy video. The problem is we are at the cusp of handing over everything we've learned to machines.
Yes.
Right? And so the reality is general intelligence, AI is real, huh? AI is more than real. We're here in the heart of it, huh? General intelligence is 10 to 15 years away. In 10 to 15 years' time, those machines are going to be smarter than we are, right? When they are smarter than we are now going to hand over solving all of the problems of the world to the smartest one of us, which is not going to be a human. The challenge is this. If they solve those problems from the same value system that we have developed in the last 70 years, we're screwed. If you go to them and say, solve global warming, and it is about a selfish, greedy, competitive position like we have developed over the last 70 years, they're going to say, sure, you're the problem, right? If I get rid of you, we're going to be all fine, right? And what we need to build instead are machines that have the value system of an Indian subcontinent child. I actually use that example quite often. You know, we all have Indian subcontinent friends here who are brilliant. They come, they code, they develop businesses, they become millionaires or billionaires, and then they go back to take care of their parents.
What are their philosophy and their ethics? Why?
So that's a great, so understand ethics and values. We tend to believe that ethics and values are like mysterious. They're not. If a woman grows up in Saudi Arabia, she tends to believe that the right way to fit in is to dress conservatively. She grows up in Brazil, she realizes that the right way to fit in is a G-string, right? Is one of them right and the other is wrong? No, it's just the general behavior of the society. Just like an artificially intelligent machine, we take as many samples of it as we can, and then we say, look, this kind of behavior makes people like me, that kind of behavior makes people dislike me, so I'm going to do that behavior, right? And that's what the machines are learning. The problem is, if machines look at one Donald Trump tweet today, they're not going to see any problem. If they look at the one Donald Trump tweet and the 30,000 hate replies below, that's a massive problem.
Yes.
Because to them, they will learn that that's the way we resolve conflict.
The way we treat each other.
That's the way we treat each other. So general intelligence will be developed to say, when someone says something I disagree with, I should thrash them, insult them, give them hate speech, and not even ask for what I want. Just make them feel bad, right? Great, we're being amazing parents here for our artificially intelligent children, right? That needs to change.
We need to all have 7.5 billion conversation about being the parents to the artificial general intelligence.
And that's exactly what the 1 billion happy is all about. So I don't know how many of you know this story, but this started to honor my son, right? I lost my son to medical malpractice. He taught me so much about happiness. And instead of being motivated by the negative, which could be vengeance against the surgeon or the hospital, I was motivated by the positive of saying, okay, this wonderful soul came into my life. He taught me so much. To honor him, I'm going to teach 10 million people what he taught me. If I can get 10 million people to remember him, then it doesn't bring him back, but it makes the world a better place. It's a good way. Instead of saying a life for a life, I said to myself, Ali's life is not worth one life. It's worth 10 million lives, right? And those 10 million lives need to be given, not taken, right? And it was amazing. The minute I decided to do that, the whole universe conspired. Like the whole world is helping, right? Now, being motivated by that positive, then got me to the point where I suddenly realized that if 10 million is possible, why is 1 billion not possible? If 1 billion happens, we change the world.
Yes.
Now we are in the heart of technology here. Everyone in this room knows that 1 billion is not a big number on the internet. It's not. Everything I've ever done at Google was in billions, right? Imagine if we have 1 billion people that tell the world what our parents were supposed to teach us. Our parents tried to teach us to be nice, to be polite, to be courteous, to be generous, to be kind. If you just change yourself, just yourself, and there are 1 billion of us out there, you know what will happen? We will dilute the entire internet in 2 years. If you follow a proper doubling function, so I'm using Moore's law here. If we move from where we are today on 1 billion happy, which is, we don't know the exact numbers, but the reach of the videos have been now in the hundreds of millions. We're estimating that somewhere around 37 million actually took action, right? If we keep doubling every year, we get to 1 billion happy in 5 years. And the trick is, if we double one more time, remember the exponential function, it's 2 billion happy on year 6. Now, at 2 billion happy, we have the majority of the internet, right? It's a crazy task, but you know what? And I will say, and you know, think of me as crazy, but I will tell you, if we don't do it, we're toast.
We're toast.
Totally toast, right? We're teaching a much smarter being to behave as horrible as we are. Very bad idea. It's a very bad idea.
And the behavior change comes from within.
Absolutely. That's the whole game, huh? So one of the most eye-opening experiences for me was the Arab Spring, right? The Arab Spring highlights to you that one person changes 2 people, they change 4 people, and then 8 million people show up in Tahrir Square, right? And that has been happening over and over and over on the web, right? It's just a matter of me changing 3 things. I swear, our humanity relies on 3 things. One is that you realize that you were born happy. It's your absolute birthright, that anyone who told you you don't deserve to be happy or that happiness is unattainable was lying, right? 2 is that you invest in it. Just like you go to the gym to have a good body, how many of us spend an hour a day investing in our happiness, watching a video, reading a book, spending time with happy people, discussing the topic of happiness, just like we do with everything that we set our minds to. And then number 3, which is the most critical part of humanity today, is can we have the compassion in our heart, now that we learned something about happiness, to make another happy?
Yes.
If you can make another happy and make them promise to make another happy, we're going to get to 1 billion in 5 years. It's as simple as that. I always say, tell 2 people who will tell 2 people who will tell 2 people. And just focus on yourself. Just keep going back to you and saying, okay, I'm going to just repeat. I'm going to now go back, invest another hour, learn something new, and tell 2 people and tell them to tell 2 people, right? That's it.
It's a pretty simple action item.
It's a very simple action item. It would change our world. Now, the real question is this. How many of us have experimented with the lie and noticed that it's not working? How many of us have earned the $100 they were expecting when they graduated from school and then said, no, I want 1,000. And then when they got the 1,000, they said, I want 50. And when they got 50, they said, I want 100,000. Only when I get 120, I'll be happy, right? And it never really happens. How many of us have realized that we really, inside, because everyone I meet is a good person, believe it or not, inside, without our egos, we're all good people, right? How many of us inside are saying, I just don't like the fact that I'm so annoying, right? I don't like the fact that I am so pretending to be what I'm not. I just want to undress, just want to go to work tomorrow and say, look, I'm stressed. You know, can you go to your manager and say, hey, by the way, I just don't like this job. Can we work together for the next 6 months to find me another job and find you a better person, right? And what's the worst that can happen? He's going to go crazy and fire you. If he's that crazy, he doesn't deserve your time anyway, right? And you're going to be fine. You're not going to starve to death. It is all of those things that we're so blinded by, and we're just moving through life, accepting the false promise when it's about time to change.
I like the push for daily analysis of happiness within oneself and then also within the community.
Yeah.
That's great. Mo, it's a very simple action item that I think that we can all do. Are you guys excited to do that? Yeah? Wake you up a bit, get a little conversation rolling? All right. How about we ask you about suffering? And you talk a lot about needless suffering, and you could have easily had a whole life of needless suffering after what happened.
Yeah.
In a utopia, is suffering necessary?
Not at all.
Okay, so how do we get to, we talk about how we do the 1 billion happy. If that can become 2 billion happy, we can have artificial general intelligence that it looks at civilization and learns, and there we go, we're good, we treat each other well. Then if we get to this point of utopia, lots of people talk about suffering being so valuable to learn from.
That's absolute crap.
Let's, unpack that.
Absolute crap. I need to go back. I promise I'll come back to the difference between pain and suffering. If I don't, please ask me. But I need you to understand what suffering is, right? So I struggled with the idea. I was very happy at age 23. I became very unhappy at age 29. At age 29, I was a director, a day trader. I was making a ton of money. I was so wealthy, so blessed in every way. And I was clinically depressed. I was miserable. And I started to say to myself as an engineer, let's define happiness. Let's define what that thing is that I'm searching for so that at least I can find it, right? And I did it in the most unusual way. I took as many data points as I could of moments in my life where I felt happy. I plotted them on charts, trying to find a trend line between them. That trend line that approximates all of the points in my life I felt happy is the happiness equation. Now, there is one common thing across every moment in your life you've ever felt happy, right? One common thing across all of the moments in your life you felt unhappy. It has nothing to do with the absolute event of your life. So really interestingly, every moment in your life where you've ever felt happy was a moment where life seemed to be going your way. It's as simple as that, right? You sit in this room, your brain immediately compares the event to its expectations of what is a safe model for your survival. It starts to think, okay, this room is a little too cold. We're going to be here for 2 hours. Is this okay? Right? That truly is what unhappiness is. So believe it or not, happiness, there is an equation. Happiness is equal to or greater than the difference between the events of your life and your expectation of how life should behave. Every single event that crosses your path, your brain solves to see if it meets its expectations or misses its expectations, right? And that gives you a few very interesting definitions of what happiness is. One is happiness is not fun. It's different. Going up, jumping up and down and dancing in a party, that's not happiness. Happiness is that peaceful feeling you get when you're okay with life as it is.
Mm-hmm. Equanimity.
Yeah, it's basically, you all have friends and partners and people in your life, right? You can look at your partner and I can guarantee you'll find a few things that are amazing and a few things that perhaps you would have liked to change, right? If you look at the things that you would like to change, you're going to be unhappy in that relationship,
yep.
Right? If you look at them in totality and say, look, as they are, I'm okay. I don't want to be any other place. When you find that moment, you found happiness. Rain, for example, doesn't make you happy or unhappy. Rain has no intrinsic value of happiness. If you're a farmer and you want to water your plants, rain makes you happy, right? If we're going through a drought and we want to make sure we stop the fires, rain makes us unhappy, makes us happy. If you want a suntan and it rains, you feel unhappy. Rain has no value of happiness. It's just the comparison between rain and what you want life to be.
These expectations and then these...
So it's events minus expectations, events minus expectations. Now that throws a very interesting definition of unhappiness. Unhappiness in that case is just a survival mechanism. It's a survival mechanism. It's your brain looking at the world around it. If it finds that the world matches its expectations, it does something amazing, it shuts the fuck up, right? When it shuts up, your default setting as a child is happy, right? The problem is, if your brain realizes that this does not match my expectations, it alerts you. What does it alert you in the form of? It alerts you in the form of emotional pain. Emotional pain is, I'm worried about the exam tomorrow. That worry is what triggers me to get up and study. I regret that I said something rude to my friend. That regret makes me call and make amends, right? Now, emotional pain is useful. Unhappiness isn't. Unhappiness is a result of pain on demand, right? Pain on demand, like Netflix of unhappiness, is basically you saying, you know what happened last Friday? let me play that again.
Uh-huh.
And suffer from it. And then let me add a little bit to it, right? So your boyfriend says something or girlfriend says something harsh on Friday. You go on Sunday and say, let me remember that and cry. Mm-hmm. And then on Monday you go, yeah, he doesn't love me anymore. And then on Tuesday you say, oh, damn, I hate dating. And then you go like, oh, on Wednesday I'm gonna spend the rest of my life alone. And you just can build as much drama as you want around it. It's all happened last Friday, and by the way, he's not going to show up and apologize, right? So you can be unhappy for as long as you want. Until you tell him or her that you're unhappy, nothing's going to happen, right? So what is useful? Now, and by the way, this is something I call the suffering cycle. Mm-hmm. The suffering cycle is actually quite straightforward. I don't know if you have one of those friends that wake up in the morning and feel super excited, so they call you at 8 a.m. because they have been awake since 6 and they really want to tell you something, right? And so they call you at 8 a.m., you don't answer, so they call at 8:01, you don't answer, so they call at 8:03, and they don't answer, and then they text you. And then they call again, and like, I have to talk to them, right? And then at 8:15, you go like, can I call you at 10, right? And they say, sure, and shut up, right? That's exactly what your brain does. It tells you, hey, by the way, your partner said something harsh on Friday. You don't do anything about it, so it makes you feel unhappy, and then you don't do anything about it, so your brain says it again. And so you feel unhappy and you do nothing about it, and so your brain says it again, and again, and again, and again. Is that useful in any way? That cycle wastes your effort, wastes your time, wastes your energy, right? And it leads to nothing at all, right? It's triggered by nothing because the event happened last Friday.
It leads to cortisol, which actually kills you.
Exactly. Right? So the reality is that cycle truly declines your ability to solve the problem, right? To actually engage. And that's really why we say that unhappiness is good for you. No, pain is good for you. Pain is good for you because it alerts you that you need to learn something, you need to change something, you need to take action, you need to change direction. Pain is good. Suffering isn't. So Ali died. Ali died means I could have closed my door and cried for the rest of my life. Truly, and if you had hugged Ali once, I guarantee you wouldn't blame me. He was an angel. He was unbelievable. He was everything. He was my coach, my son. I always say he was my son and my son, right? Now, what good would that be? At my deathbed, he would still not be here, right? And I know it sounds really unfeeling. No, I cry every time I remember him. I do. But what good is that? Now, suddenly you start to tell yourself, so I feel the pain. And I promise you, the one thing that changed my life is I found a way to take that pain every single morning and turn it into, I'm going to go out there and make another 1,000 people happy.
Yeah.
Right? Can you actually do that? Can you actually say...
And it's like the sun, too. The sun.
Right? So can you take the pain, because pain is coming from outside you, and instead of turning it into incessant thinking that just tortures you, turn it into energy that makes the world a better place. And I have clear examples of that. Huh? Every morning, I have a very simple deal with my brain. I have a deal that says...
Got to get that deal.
It's really straightforward. Huh? You have to understand this. The thoughts in your head are not you, right? The thoughts in your head are a biological function. This is your brain producing a concept that you can understand in English.
Am I safe? Do I have food? Can I get sleep?
It's basically processing everything. There is an MIT study that is incredible. You should look at it. 2009, they did MRI studies giving people word puzzles, right? And they basically asked them to solve problems. The problem was solved in a few seconds based on how complex the problem is. And then the verbal association engine of your brain, the part that actually lights up when you speak out loud, starts to blink for up to 8 seconds, and then the participant would know the answer. So the brain actually solves the problem first, and then takes 8 seconds to turn it to English so that you understand it, right? It's a biological function. How many of you wake up every morning and tell yourself, I am blood? You know, the biological function of your heart is to pump blood around your body. You don't call yourself blood. No one calls themselves urine, right? So seriously, the biological function of your kidney. But somehow we think that The thoughts in my head are me talking to me. If it was you talking to you, why would you need to talk? Like seriously, right? Now, once you realize that, everything changes, right? So I have a very clear deal with my brain as a third party. My brain is a third party. So it's allowed to give me only two types of thought. The third, it gets kicked out of my room, right? And comes back with a better thought. So my brain can bring me a joyful thought or a useful thought, right? If the thought is joyful, we will go along with it. If it's not, I will stop it, right? So every morning I wake up and my brain will tell me, I'm not making this up. I love that boy so much. Every morning I will wake up and my brain will say, Ali died. And every morning I will wake up and deliberately say, no brain, Ali lived. Ali lived is the same thought. But when I remind my brain that Ali lived, I get 21 and a half incredible years of all of the wonderful moments that we spent together. It's the same thought, like Ali died, but Ali died would bring his image in the intensive care room. I don't want that image because it's useless.
It's the 21 years of bliss that you had, and then what you're doing with it now that drives, that this fuels the same thought, but there's different outcomes.
And the outcome is so different. The outcome is so different. When you lead your brain as a third party, suddenly your brain does amazing things. So same applies to useful thoughts. When Ali died, my brain started to say every single minute for the next 4 hours, it had one thought, repeating over and over and over, you should have driven him to another hospital. Until out loud, I told myself, what can I do with that brain? What can I do with that thought? Can I go back and drive him to another hospital now? Can you please go back and find me a better thought? Just like I'm talking to a third party, a friend who's constantly complaining, right? And my brain was like, okay, let me think about that, right? 4 days later, it came back and said, hey, what about if we share his model with 10 million people and make them happy? Would that be a good thought?
Yes.
I was like, yeah, I'll take that. Let's do it, right? That's a great thought. And does it bring him back? It does not bring him back. Understand this.
You have a contract with your brain to not allow needless suffering.
Absolutely. Don't waste my life. And by the way, I learned that as an executive, right? So people would walk into my room and complain. And, being courteous, I listen for the first 10 minutes. And then after 10 minutes, what do good executives say? They say, okay, what's good about this situation, right? Or what can we do about it? What do you want me to change? What actions can we take, right? And once you do that, the person on the other side, now that they've vented a little, they will say, well, but I also like this, and maybe we shouldn't change that, but maybe we should do this. Great. That's the kind of thought that we want. Incessant thinking is useless. It's just complaining.
Okay, let's power through a couple questions and then let's get to the Q&A. First question is, what do you think happens after death?
Oh, that's not an easy question. I do not know the answer to that, okay? But I know that we never really die. I know that was science. So understand this, I'm dead center between EQ and IQ, but I've learned through the modern world to prioritize my IQ, to prioritize logic, right? And so every single thing I say in Solve for Happy and all of my lectures or teachings or whatever, I avoid going to my spiritual side because I want to remain objective. There are so many people in the world that can talk about things from a spiritual point of view. I want to be the objective one that talks about it from science. I don't know if we have the time for this, but if you truly understand the theory of relativity, if you truly understand space-time continuum, if you truly understand that time does not really exist in the form that we understand it does, you have to start questioning who died first, me or Ali? Who lived first, me or Ali? First or last is a property of the physical. It's a property of this physical world. If space-time continuum exists, and I can actually perceive time, that must mean I have a vantage point that stays with outside time. A vantage point is a prerequisite to perception. I cannot perceive this building if I'm inside it. For me to perceive this building, I have to be outside it. For us to see planet Earth, we had to send people outside or machines outside, right? If you're within time, you wouldn't perceive time. The reason why we perceive the arrow of time is because we reside outside space-time. The real us resides outside space-time. And most of us don't realize that
the real us.
Oh yeah, this is the avatar.
This is the avatar.
This truly is the avatar.
This flesh vehicle, this meat
puppet. This is the vehicle that the physical vehicle you use to navigate the physical form, the physical world, right? It's the avatar. You're sitting somewhere else with the controller, right? Otherwise, you wouldn't perceive any of this. You could not perceive it if you're inside it. The other side of it, if you combine quantum physics with the Big Bang Theory, you start to realize the simplest things that science ignores to mention for some reason. Our Big Bang says 13.7 billion years ago, there was a tiny mass that compressed enough and then exploded into gases and then condensed into planets and other objects, right? 4.3 billion years ago, there was planet Earth. It cooled down, and then I think 3.9 billion of those years, there was no life, and then life started to show. Or whatever the numbers are, please don't quote me on the numbers, but they're within those ranges. Quantum physics, on the other hand, will tell you that nothing actually exists in its particle form until observed. So who was observing this for the first 13 billion years? Life has always existed somehow in some form. And so what I can tell you is this with certainty, that death is not the opposite of life. Death is the opposite of birth. You come into this world through a portal that we call birth. You leave this physical form through a portal that we call death. But life exists before, during, and after, right? Now, when you think about it this way, you realize that what died is my son's physical form. And you know what is the only thing that is certain, unless you find a miracle somehow, is that I will die too. Okay? This physical form will go too. The only certainty is that wherever Ali is now, I will be too. Right? Whatever that is. And the journey between now and then might be a year, 10, 20, 30. In the absence of time, in the relativity of time, it will go like this. And we all know that. You just look back at your last 30 years and ask yourself how quickly they passed. Now,
blink of an eye.
Blink of an eye.
So fast. And hopefully there's more life after the portal of
So what happens after is really where I somehow blame spirituality, because some of them will say with certainty it's reincarnation, others will say with certainty it's life, heaven and hell, and we don't have proof of that. But does it really matter? If you're a video gamer and you know that at the end of the game, the console, or at the end of the level, the console is going to blink a little bit, the screen is going to go dark, and then you're going to go to another level. Or maybe the game will end. Does it make any difference to the way you play this level? This is the level you're in. Play it as best as you can.
Yes.
Right? And regardless of what happens on the next level, if the enemies will have bigger armors, or there will not be enemies, or suddenly the game will be over and you'll put the controller down, does it really make any difference to the way you play this level? The way you play this level is to become the absolute best gamer you can become.
Yeah.
And that's truly the whole trick. If we manage to stop thinking about the next level, or actually just the next move in the game, and just focus on this move, everything becomes easy.
And this piggybacks, this rides right into the question that we ask on the show a lot, which is, do you think we're in a simulation?
What difference does it make? Do I think we're in a simulation? Define a simulation. If you really define a simulation, absolutely we're in a simulation, right? So none of what you see is actually what you see. None of what you touch is actually what you touch. We don't touch anything. Do you realize that? You've never touched anything in your life. The molecular forces, how can you touch when really the mass in this skin, I'm sure you understand that, huh? So the entire mass in your body is probably a pin size, and the rest is space. The rest is electrons orbiting the nuclei in a, at a very large distance. And the reason why you can touch is because there is, force here and force there, and they just cannot interact, right? If I really look at you, it's actually quite interesting, huh?
I see you inside of myself.
Absolutely. So the reality is, you're not here. You're mostly empty space, but the photons hitting your head are just slightly smaller than the distances, slightly bigger, so they reflect, right? So they reflect to my eye, they trigger an electrical signal that gets translated into my brain as, a wonderful, elegant shirt, right? But is that really a shirt? Is that really something? Does a cat see it the same way? Will the artificially intelligent machines see it the same way? Of course not. And so the reality is that this entire world we live in is just an electrical signal in your brain, which is not very different from Halo.
Yeah.
Just saying, right? But it doesn't have to be a video game. It doesn't have to be a simulation. It just operates suspiciously similar to a video game.
That there is some grand designer of the game, and that there is maybe multiple grand designers. Maybe you do have a controller, and when you go through the portal of death, then you jump into controlling another avatar. And how many of your memories you remember from your previous avatars, who knows? It's exciting stuff, Mo. One last question is, what do you think is the most beautiful thing in the world?
Well, it's the only thing in the world, the truth. I think the most beautiful thing in the world is the truth. And I tend to believe that we're all here in a quest that's never going to be fulfilled to constantly seek what that is, which is a quest that starts with finding out what's not true. Because in reality, the only method you can ever get to something that's remotely simulates the truth or represents the truth is to at least find out what isn't. Okay? And my entire work, as a matter of fact, even half of what I'm working on now, is an attempt to show you how much of an illusion we live in and believe to be true. And if you just strip the illusions one by one, what's left behind is the truth. So it's a quest that will take the rest of my life, and I can guarantee you I'm never going to find it. But it's so interesting to just find out what isn't, one by one.
And when we truly know the extent of our ignorance, it's easier to find out what's not the truth.
Yeah, we're pretty ignorant. We know nothing at all.
We know nothing at all. It's true. And we'll help you here. We will help you get to 1 billion happy, and from there, it'll be easier to train the artificial general intelligence.
I hope so, yeah. You guys promised, so.
You promised.
Yeah.
We promised. Okay, great. Mo, thank you for the conversation first. I just want to let's give a big round of applause for the conversation.